Hello, my name is Torsten Tauble. Welcome to episode number 23. And today's topic is about stock trading. And so, what is stock trading really? And have any of you been curious about trading stocks and have never done it, or don't know anything about it, or it seems really scary, or maybe it is something that has been in your world or pinging you in some sort of way? Like, what is it? Is it this strange thing that seems really complicated or difficult, or is it really something completely different? And so I know for some people, they've tried it. They've played with it a little bit, maybe dabbled in it a little bit. I know some people have probably not done anything with it. Know people that have done things, know people that have lost money, know people that have made money, but have never ever played with it themselves. And so, what if it was something that you could actually play with? What if it was something that could just be another income stream potentially for you, or just some other avenue that could just end up being really fun. And so I know in previous shows I've talked about a little bit of trading, and I do a little bit of stock trading myself. And for me, uh, trading stocks is very much um, a game in a way, but it's more following my knowing or following my intuition or whatever you want to call it. And so I know that that is where I get to play with it. And so that's what's really fun for me. And it is really this place where, like with a lot of things in life, you have these awarenesses, you have these places in your world that you have some information or knowing about, and it's really acting on that and playing with that, and it's really being in the space of possibility. And I like to play with it with stocks, and it's interesting. Hello. Hello, Tanya. And what's interesting is that when you play with stocks, um, it isn't as overwhelming or as confusing as some people make it. It is actually a place that anyone can really play in, and it's not so difficult, and it's not necessarily kind of this scary place that only certain people can do or only professionals can do. It's not like that at all, actually. And when you get to know some basic things and you get to understand a little bit on how things work, it becomes quite simple. And for me, anyways, I really like it when you enter something that's new to you. And yeah, it's probably a little bit overwhelming in the beginning. There's a lot to know about it and a lot to learn. And that's actually kind of the fun part. And then as you get to know how things move and get a sense of how things work, then you get to kind of play a little bit more and really look at how you can actually play with it or use the way things move to your advantage. Because really, I mean, in a really, really simplistic way, playing with stocks, is buying when things are low and then selling when they're high. Like, that's not difficult. That's not difficult at all. In fact, that's super easy. People end up making it difficult, and a lot of people, when they get into playing in the stock market, what it does is they start creating a lot of doubt in their world, and that's where they make it difficult. That's where things start becoming stressful, and they may be using amount of money that if for whatever reason they lose that money, it would make their life more difficult or create less ease in the world. And so it's also looking at these different places and where you can play with it and what that will create in your world. But it's really interesting. Like, it is not as the world of stocks is not as a scary place as I think a lot of people make it. It's really this place where you can play and you can actually practice. It's a really cool place to practice your knowing. And so that's what I like to play with stocks. So I look at it completely different. And for me as well, there's many different things that you can trade. Like, there's just stocks, and then there's options and warrants and futures and these kinds of things, and then ETFs and all these different vehicles basically that you can play with, and they have different amounts of risk involved with them. And so some of these particular vehicles are difficult to fully comprehend how they fully work altogether. And the cool thing is you don't actually require to know exactly how they work. You just have to be aware of how they move and the different components that create a different way of movement. And that's all that's required. And really, in that sense, it really simplifies things a lot too. Like, it really simplifies on getting in and playing. And the other cool thing with playing in the stock market is that a lot of people think that you require a lot of money, which is also not true. In certain areas, if you want to play, yes, it does require money, but not in everything. And so you could literally start with only, a few $100s and go from there. And what's cool with starting with a small amount is, as you learn, and you will lose some money along the way, and you'll, make some incorrect calls and so on. And with playing with a small amount of money, one, it gets you involved and it actually gets you in. It's different than paper trading. And two, it gets you used to how things actually move and what it's like to actually do things real time. And another thing that's really cool is it's a place where there's times where you're required to act. And so it actually kind of like builds the muscle of doing when the time is right, kind of thing. And if you don't do when the time is right, then usually things go against you. Or you didn't get out at a time where it was favorable, or you didn't get in at a time that was favorable. And so it's playing with those different things. And so it's really cool. Like, there's all these elements of different things that show up in every day that, for me, actually kind of get exponentialized while trading. Because there's often certain times where time is of essence, where it's like, okay, now's the time. Now's when you have to act. Now's when you have to get in, or now's when you have to get out. And so it requires certain action points at certain points in time, in a cycle or whatever it may be. And so, just like in daily life, there's times where you have this knowing where it's time to act, and often maybe you don't. And in trading, it becomes a lot more obvious than maybe sometimes in your daily life. And so it's playing with that as well. And so it's really cool, like how all these elements that show up when you trade, that show up in your daily life, but they're probably a little bit more heightened, and it really requires you to be aware. And when you choose not to be aware, that's when things probably will kind of go against you in a way, or you weren't paying attention, and so when you knew you should have got out, you didn't, and so then it goes against you. And so it's like, it really has all these elements of daily life, and this is the same thing with our daily life. Like, what is it? How is it in our world that we change things? How is it in our world that we do things in a different way, and how that creates change? And really, for me, that's how I see trading. That's how trading actually contributes to my life, is that it requires me to be more aware all the time, and always to be in the question, okay, what else is possible here? What else is next? Is now the time? And it's really playing with that. And so part of me talking about trading today was to also get a sense of like looking at it probably from a different perspective or a different point of view, where most people have fairly sort of, I guess, fixed points of views of what it's like to trade stocks, and that there's probably tons of risk involved in trading stocks. And that's the other thing, like if you're just trading stocks, there isn't a huge amount of risk involved in it. Also, the amount of gain is much smaller compared to some other things that have more volatility or more risk involved in it. But actually trading stocks themselves is a pretty low risk thing to do, really. It's once you get into the other things where you have a lot of leverage and margin and stuff like that, where things get interesting, and it can be more fun. Like if you're really into things moving fast and that you have to be aware all the time, then trading some of the things like options or futures or CFDs or something like that move quicker, that's actually more fun. And that actually is what draws a lot of people to it. It's the fun aspect of it. And I don't know, probably not enough people talk about how much fun trading actually is and can be. And it's also tied in with making money, and also when you don't make money, it's also playing with like not making yourself wrong. It's like, okay, so cool, so that happened, I chose this, I chose that, what can I choose different next time that will have a different, so the outcome will be different. And so it's like really playing with those kinds of things too. So there's all these different elements of trading that I use of ways of playing that I use in my daily life, basically. And so, and it's fun to make money. Like there's no question that it's fun when you become when you choose things and you're aware of what that will create, and to be aware of like, wow, I actually created that, and acknowledging that you created that, and that's fun. And then the money is like, and that's another fun thing, like that adds to it as well. And so it really is taking it to another level of playing. It's kind of like playing on another level in your life with something different, with a completely different thing than say maybe relationships or your business or your education or your job or whatever that may be. And it has elements of all those things as well in it. And so it's different and it's not different as well at the same time. And so it's like really cool to play with that, to see how all the things that you do in your daily life actually contribute to being a good trader and making money, and also just being aware of what works for you too. Because there's a big thing with people probably get drawn into different aspects of trading, and it doesn't actually work for them, whether they don't have the time to do what's required at different points uh, in trading. Like, maybe there's a lot of movement and you have to be, available, or you have to make yourself available to be online at a certain time, and it may not be the same time all the time. Maybe you just don't have that availability in your life, so you trade in a different way. Maybe you only look at the market at the end of the day, or you only look at the end of the week, and then you look at things based on those time frames and play with that. Like, there's so many different ways to trade. It's just not one way. And so it's also looking at what works for you, what works for you as far as time, what works for you as far as risk, what works for you as far as the amount that you would like to make, and also the amount that you're able to play with. So all these different things come into play, and it's really looking at, like, okay, so what actually works for me? There's all these different possibilities out there, and what works for me? And then looking at where, with all the different things involved, as far as time goes, as far as amount of risk that you're willing to risk, and also the amount of money you have to play with at your disposal. Maybe you only have a few $100s, maybe you have a few thousand, maybe you have a few 100,000. So it's going to be different for everyone. And then what am I going to play with that? And what can I play with what I have? And so it's really looking at what works for you. And like, for instance, I'll give you an example for risk. Like, some people have much higher risk tolerances, in the sense of they can risk a lot, potentially gaining more or potentially losing more, and they're okay with that. Whereas other people, the percentage that they risk, if they risk only a tiny bit, they're already like freaking out and stressing out or whatever, and they don't have a high risk tolerance, which is fine. It just being aware of what works for you, and then playing within the risk that you are comfortable with. And some people also use it a way of being comfortable with more risk, like just being comfortable with being uncomfortable, basically. And so playing with that as well. So there's all these different elements in trading that really get you to look at you, look at how you are, become aware of what works for you too, and then looking at, okay, so I'm aware of all these different things. Now, what would be best for me to trade, whether it's stocks or maybe ETFs or options or whatever? And it's really cool because you get to look at all these different things, and it's really important to look at all these things to really set something up that works for you. And likely whatever works for you may not work for your friend, or may not work for your neighbor, or may not work for who knows, anyone else in your life. And the other thing too is, like, there's also the difference between investing and trading. Whereas there are some people that are just investors, and they basically are in it for the long term. So they'll maybe trade some stocks, and they'll hold it for a certain stock for maybe 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. And that's more of an investor. A trader is much more looking to turn more profit in a short period of time. And so it's also looking at what works for you. Are you interested in just putting your money somewhere and just kind of parking it there and letting it gain as the market goes up? And then also looking at the different sectors that work in your favor in that time frame. And so some people only like to do that, and that works for them. And then there's others that are interested in being more active. And so some people like to trade where they do a few trades maybe every few days, or once a week, or once every couple of weeks. And then there's people that like to trade every day and sometimes multiple times within a day. And to also see what works for you there. I know I've done all kinds of trading, and day trading doesn't really work for me so much. I'm more interested in what they call swing trading, where you trade for, when you get into a position, you're looking to hold it for a few days to a couple of weeks, even potentially up to a month or two at the most. So that's kind of that's what works for me. And I've tried a lot of different things to find out to actually get there and go, yeah, okay, this is what works for me. This is actually what's fun. I actually enjoy doing this. And so it's also looking at that for you. What kind of time commitment, what kind of time frame works for you? How available are you to be online at different times of the day potentially, or there's only certain times of the day that work for you? Maybe you have a family, so evenings might be the only time that really work on any level. And so it's looking at all these kinds of things. Maybe you have a full-time job and this is a side thing. Maybe you have a super flexible schedule, and so any time really works for you. And so it's like looking at all these different aspects of your life and seeing what actually works. And it's really it's interesting when you start to become aware of, you know, what kind of life you live and what other time is available, or what other time are you willing to make available for something else. And some people look at stock trading as like a part-time job, like it's another part-time job that they have. I know a few people that have done really well with just having it as basically a part-time job. And so it is all these different things once you decide that it is something that interests you and that's something that you want to play with. And even before you get to that, one thing that if you've never traded before and you've never done anything at all, one thing that I do recommend is to do a bunch of research before you do anything. Watch tons of YouTube videos, read articles, just get a sense of what it is. And I do highly recommend also taking a course from somebody. There's a few, you know, really amazing people. There's some really good newsletters out there too that you can follow. But it's something that would, like, taking a course to have somebody walk you through what it's like to trade really makes the learning curve a lot quicker, and it'll probably create a lot more ease in your world in having somebody that you can communicate with, and when things show up that you can actually ask questions to and that you can learn from. And then also, once you do learn, it's kind of fun to play on your own too, like just to look at things and then start really getting in the space of, like, what are you aware of in certain areas, and are there times where you're just like, you have this knowing, you're like, yeah, I know that this is going to go up, or I know that this is going to go down, and, you know, this is a time to do something about it. And actually paying attention to that little piece of knowing that you have, where you're like, yeah, I think it's gonna go one way or another, and playing with that. And, like, even if it's a small position that you end up taking in that, you take that position and see what happens. And there's been plenty of times where I didn't take a position and I saw what happens, and I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. Like, it totally went in the direction that I was aware of that it would go. And so it's like really playing with that. And so again, it also, when you do that, it reinforces your knowing, like how much you actually do know and how much you're aware of. And so with that, this is just another way of making money with your knowing. Like, I don't know, for me it is fun. Like, I love it in that sense. And have I lost money? Absolutely. I've lost tons of money. Have I made money? Yeah, I've made a lot of money too. And what's interesting when I look over the years, and I've traded for I don't know, like 12 years now, not full time, but and when I look at those years of trading, I see the areas where I lost a lot of money, and it was in those periods of times that what they call it, I was married to a position, and that was where I basically had this point of view that it was only going to go this one direction. And at that point, the direction of the trend had changed. And so I kept on going against the trend and lost a lot of money by doing that. And so it's really being in the question that creates the possibility for so much more to show up, especially in trading. And so it's just being willing to follow the trend, which in trading they say is your friend. Anytime you go against it, that's usually when you lose money. And losing money is usually not that much fun. And you gain a lot of awareness from losing money as well. And so it is this learning, and it's looking at, what else can you create with it, and how much fun can you have? And when you have awarenesses around it and you do act on it and you do make money, it's really cool. It's really cool to be able to acknowledge what you know and acting on what you know. And for me, trading is one of the most, what's the word, like, one of the areas that it is the most apparent. It's the most apparent because it's apparent when you lose and make money or break even. Like, it's really in your face. And that's what the neat thing about trading is for me. And really, this is an invitation of what else can you add to your life. If you've never traded before, maybe it's something you'd like to consider. And maybe it is actually something, if you've had any interest in it at any point in time, it might just be something that you know something about and something that you might actually be really good at. So play with it and ask some questions around it. Would trading stocks or anything within trading stocks be fun? And could it be another way to add to my life and add value and add an income stream? And how much fun, could I have with it? For me, it doesn't take up tons of time. I've been doing it for a while now, so there's less sort of research per se, and also I do pay other people to do the research too. And so there's so many different options with trading, and there's so many different possibilities with it, really. And would it be something that would be fun for you and something that you'd like to add to your life? And if it would, who would you need to talk to? Who would you need to play with? And how much could it contribute to your life? So these are just some things to look at, some things to play with and question, and let me know about any trading experiences you've had, any interest you have in trading. Yeah, let me know. I'd be totally interested to know. And yeah, that's about it for this week, I think. Thank you all for checking in, and we will see you again same time next week, same place, or maybe a different place. And have an awesome week or weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.